The Planet Serpo exchange project traces its origins to the famous Roswell incident where a UFO reportedly crashed in the plains near Socorro, New Mexico, on May 31, 1947. The remains of the craft and one living ET, along with the bodies of his 4 dead companions, were taken to Roswell for analysis. Meanwhile, the government reported to the American public by telling them they had only seen weather balloons. As it turned out, there were 2 crashes. The remains of the second UFO were not found until about 2 years later. It appeared the 2 spacecraft had crashed into each other. By then, 6 bodies of dead aliens had decomposed. Apparently, the extraterrestrial worked with his damaged ship to try and communicate with his planet, but failed. He eventually passed away, but in the early 50s the US military supposedly came into contact with this alien race, called the Ebens, who lived on Serpo. As communications transpired over the next decade, an exchange program was set up between the 2 planets, and 10 American men, along with 2 American women, were selected for the experiment. The exchange was scheduled to occur at Holloman Air Force Base on April 24, 1964, with approval from President John F. Kennedy. 2 Eben spaceships landed as planned. A contingent of American government personnel greeted them. The 12 American astronauts prepared to embark on their adventure, but for some reason, the exchange got postponed. The Ebens retrieved the remains of their dead comrades and left. The Ebens returned in July 1965 and picked up their passengers. There were strict requirements in order for a person to join the program, and the training was rigorous. In short, the ones chosen for the journey could not be married or have children. And though it was not a requirement, having living family members like parents or siblings was not ideal. The assignment required their unquestioned absence for 10 years, no one on Earth should be concerned about their whereabouts for the duration of the mission. The Earth travelers took literally tons of supplies with them, including food, medicine, weapons, and jeeps and motorcycles, but during the trip, they ate Eben food, which they heartily disliked because they said it tasted like paper. On the journey, they explored the spacecraft and were able to communicate with Earth. Unfortunately, one American had some kind of accident and died on the trip. They completed the 40 light-year distance in only 10 months. When the spacecraft landed and the Americans disembarked, they received quite a positive welcome. A large number of Ebens were present to greet them and an Eben female spokesperson spoke to them in fluent English. The astronauts were overwhelmed with the brightness of the 2 suns. It was about 107 degrees and they all were in great discomfort due to the heat, which remained a problem for them during their entire stay on the planet. The Americans expected to stay on Serpo for 10 years. As it turns out, due to their confusion with their calendars, they stayed 13 years. It was difficult to keep track of days and times since the planet had 2 suns and it never got completely dark. One day on Eben lasted 40 hours as opposed to our 24. During their stay on Serpo, the Americans learned what they could about the history of the Ebens. The population of Serpo at the time of the visit was about 650,000 and all were Ebens. There was no other race or species on the planet other than Ebens. The astronauts learned about the Ebens' religious beliefs and technology. It seemed they lived fairly primitively for a culture that also had advanced technology. Specifically, Ebens had anti-gravity vehicles they used for ground transportation. After a few years, the Americans moved to the northern part of the planet where it was cooler and they were able to grow food more to their liking. They had taken with them food to last for more than 2 years, but when it ran out, they had to eat Eben food which they never learned to like. Due to radiation exposure, 2 of the members of the expedition died while on Serpo. Reports from anonymous sources. In 2005, UFO discussion group leader and former government employee, Victor Martinez, received a series of emails from someone identified only as anonymous. Anonymous claimed to be a retired government employee, and he or she supplied much of the information about the exchange program. Through the years, officials who are privy to this information have provided some acknowledgement that the reports are true. Throughout history of mankind, we have talked about people visit us from other worlds. The Indian in every native culture talked about the star people in many different forms. The Sumerian people spoke of the Anunnaki that comes from the skies. And in every mythology and religion they spoke of angels and gods coming down to us from heaven. Is there more to the stories than simply our own imagination? Is there any life form out in the space? And do we really experience a solar trip to another star system? Follow a mystical world and find out.